What's up everyone, welcome back to the beginner breakdown series for King of Fighters 14. In this episode we're going to go over Angel. If you've never seen the beginner breakdown episode before, this video series is intended more for beginners or players who are just trying to learn the basics of a character. Feel free to check the timestamps below, that way you can flip around the episode and only watch parts that you need help on. Otherwise, let's get started. Let's go over far normals first. Here's far light punch. It is a mid, and we blocked both crouching or standing. It's a little bit plus on block, has pretty solid range. It does whiff a lot on, mid-sized characters or smaller. It will not whiff on big-bodied characters, and that is if they're crouching. And you can special cancel it. Far light kick is a mid, it can block both crouching or standing. It's a little bit negative on block. It's pretty good range on it. It will whiff on medium-sized crouchers or smaller. It will not whiff on big-bodied characters if they're crouching. One thing to note about that whiffing on crouchers is that the hitbox does taper off at the end, so at max range where it would normally hit, it might not hit crouchers unless they're a big-bodied character. But if you're just a little bit closer, it will hit them. Far heavy punch is a mid. We block both crouching or standing. It's a little bit negative on block. And you can super cancel it. Here's far heavy kick. It is a mid, and we block both crouching or standing. It will whiff on small and medium-sized crouchers. If it's a big body character, it will hit them. Then next up we got close buttons. Here's close light punch. It is a mid. We block both crouching or standing. It's a tiny bit negative on block, and you can special and super cancel it. Then here is close light kick. It is a mid, and we block both crouching or standing. It's a tiny bit plus on block, and you can special and super cancel it. Close heavy punch is a mid, and we block both crouching or standing. It's a tiny bit negative on block, and you can super and special cancel it. Close heavy kick is a mid, and we block both crouching or standing. It's more negative than the other buttons, but it does push back a lot on hit or block, and you can super and special cancel it. Then up next we got crouching buttons. Here's crouching light punch. It is a mid, so we block both crouching or standing. It's a little bit plus on block. You can chain up to 3 in a row from point blank, and you can super and special cancel it. Crouching light kick is a low, so it can only be blocked crouching. It's just a tiny bit plus on block. You can chain up to 3 in a row from point blank. If you want a special cancel after that, you'll have to go into crouching light punch. Crouching heavy punch is a mid, and we block both crouching or standing. It is very negative on block, and as you see on hit, it launches the opponent up in the air. It's very slow, so it's not a very good anti-air if you're thinking about using it for that. There are some combos you can get off of it, but I probably wouldn't start there with this special move, or with this normal. But you can super and special cancel it and go into her chain moves from that. Crouching heavy kick is a low. You can only block crouching. It's her sweep. It's only a tiny bit negative on block, very, very hard to punish. And you can super and special cancel it. Next up we got jumping normals. Here's jumping light punch, light kick, heavy punch, and heavy kick. They all work as pretty standard jump-ins as long as you time it right. Jumping heavy punch is a good button to cross up with. It's very easy to use as a cross up. Hitbox is like where her elbow is as she's flying forward. It's pretty hard to hit on the front side with it. As soon as you go over though and you hit the button, you'll probably cross them up. Jumping light kick can also cross up if you wanted to use that. Jumping heavy kick is an all-around good short hop and jump in tool. If you just want to stick to one button, jumping heavy kick's not a bad one. Has a good range on it. You can short hop with it, and you can just regular jump with it as well. She also has a command normal up in the air. It's down and heavy kick. It's this knee right here. I mean, it's standard. It works just like all the other buttons. She also has another jumping attack. It's a down and heavy kick in the air. It's a command air normal. It has a good hitbox to cross up, and it's just like another jump-in button. You could use that if you wanted to. Then Angel's jumping blowback attack, which is execute by hitting heavy punch and heavy kick while in the air. Looks like that. It's standard, it's good, it has good range on it. You can use it as an air-to-air if you time it right and hit it and throw it out early enough. You can short hop with it, and it's good, and it's plus on block just like all of the other jumping air attacks or blowback attacks. Next up we're going to go over Angel's command normals. She has one, and it's forward and light kick. Looks like this. From up close, it's 2 hits. You can special and super cancel either of those 2 hits, and it's useful as a combo tool. And you can only really combo into it from anything with high hit stunts or heavy buttons, for example. So you can allow for some easy combos from there. Generally speaking, for a lot of your combos, you want to cancel the first hit, just because they tend to be further back if you cancel on the second hit. And then the same thing applies if you're canceling into her chains from that. You'll want to cancel on the first hit in pretty much every case. This command normal is also really good on block. It is even on block. Then Angel's standing blowback attack, which you can execute by hitting heavy punch and heavy kick while on the ground. It looks like this. Really good range on it, goes pretty far. It's a pretty standard affair, not very negative, and you can super and special cancel if you needed to make it a little bit safer. Quickly go over throws. Here's her forward throw. Not a hard knockdown. And then back throw is a hard knockdown. It lets you run in on them if you need to. Next up, we're going to go over Angel's special moves. Her first one is half circle back plus kick. So it is a light kick version. Light kick and heavy kick are pretty much the exact same thing. She goes the exact same distance, does the same amount of damage. These are punishable with like quick attacks. This is a special move that you'll be using at the end of certain chain attacks or chain sequences where the opponent's in a juggled state and you can catch them out of the air with it. You can combo into this move with anything with high hit stun. So her heavy buttons will work, and then her command normal as well. The EX version of this does more damage and is a lot quicker. It covers a little bit more ground as well. And because it's quicker, you can combo into it from low hit stun attacks. But just like the normal version, you'll probably be using it at the end of certain chain sequences. Next special move she has is a backwards uppercut motion. In other words, it's back, down, and down back, plus kick. So that's the whiff animation. It is a command grab. If you do happen to land it, you can easily get that special move afterwards. You cannot hit him with that super, but you can hit him with a Climax super if you wanted to. It's pretty difficult to combo into because there's a lot of startup on it. It's a little bit easier to combo to the EX one if you wanted to, but it still has some of the same issues, range and like long startup. And the X version is a little bit quicker and it does more damage, and you get a lot of the same follow-ups afterwards. So next up we're going to go over her chain sequences. They're a lot like Tekken chains. They're not too difficult, it just requires some memorization. The easiest way to think of this chain is a sequence of A, B, and then C. A is your opener, and then B is the middle part, and then C closes it. So for example, that was 3 different special moves, 3 different parts of the chain, A, B, and C. And of course there's different commands you can hit or input during A or B or C to change what that whole sequence or chain will look like. So first off, let's go over your openers. What can you do in the A part of this? One of the first options you have is down forward and light kick. This is walk up low. So that is a low, can only block crouching. Has a lot of startup on it. You can get it off of a lot of buttons as long as there's a lot of hit stun on it. So her heavy buttons and her command normal. And again, you want to cancel the command normal on the first hit. And even if you make the opponent block standing, and then they don't switch guard at all, it will count as a low, even though that is like a block string. They can't jump out of it. You can super cancel that, but it's probably best to go into the other parts of the sequence. The other command normal you can do is down forward and heavy kick. So this is an overhead, so if the opponent is crouch blocking, they'll get hit by that. You can also use it in block strings as well, much like the other command I just showed you, down forward and light kick. So for example, that was a block string, and then even though they were in block stun, it did count as an overhead. It did not count as a mid, like a lot of times the command normals do in this game. If it ends up being an overhead, as soon as you use it in a block string, it becomes a mid. So you could feasibly see that an opponent is crouch blocking, or they're crouch blocking a lot, and you can open them up with that, as long as you're not too far. And you can super cancel that overhead as well. So down forward light kick and down forward heavy kick, the low and the overhead, respectively. They're both a bit negative on block. They're really difficult to punish, especially if you use them as part of a block string, because you'll get additional pushback on all your normals before that. Down forward heavy kick can really only be comboed into from her command normal, and the first hit of it only. As you see, close heavy punch and close heavy kick will whiff afterwards. Next opener she has is back, then 4 and kick. Looks like that. It's 2 hits from up close. The first thing to note about this special move is that it's 2 hits from up close, but if the opponent is crouching, that first hit will whiff completely, unless they're a big-bodied character. However, if you do combo into it, and the opponent is crouching, both hits will land. That is one of her better openers to start with. It leads into a lot of bread and butters that you could learn to do the most damage with Angel. So as I said, it's 2 hits. Generally speaking, you'll be canceling the first hit of it. You can super cancel either of them, and you can also cancel into the next part of her chain from either of those 2 hits, but just do the first one. You can get it off of high hit stun buttons pretty easily, including her command normal. You can even get it off of low hit stun buttons like those crouching buttons I just used. And just a really quick tip, if you're having trouble landing that from a crouching sequence like I just showed you, what I do is I'm holding down back during this, and then I just roll. I'm using a stick. I roll from down back to back. I don't let the stick go to neutral. And then, you know, forward and then kick. Oops. It looks like that. I just didn't do it quick enough, so it didn't combo. Also, what makes this opener useful is that it's only a little bit negative on block, pretty difficult to punish. Her next opener she has is core circle back plus punch. Here's light punch version of it, and here's the heavy punch version of it. They look identical. On guard, the light punch version of it will push back. Heavy punch version of it will keep them still. And then also the heavy punch version of it is only a little bit negative on block. It's kind of interesting. So you could try comboing into it and committing to it to the heavy punch version of it. And if they block it, you're pretty safe for the most part. But you are negative and you kind of lose your turn, and you're right next to them since it didn't really push them back. This special move, generally, you won't be comboing into it unless it's from something with high hit stun. So like her close heavy buttons and even her command normal. And you can super cancel it. Also, one thing to note that I'm not completely sure on is you can combo into it from one light button. I think it's maybe the only one. So close light kick. As you see right there, it combos. Because of that, that means you can do like crouching light kick, which is a low, into standing close light kick. Not a lot of great follow-ups you can get afterwards since it kind of sends them flying. You can get that follow-up, which is forward and light kick, and I'll go over that follow-up some more in the next section. And then we have the EX version, which has a longer startup on it, but there's something special about it. As you see, the dummy is set to block, so it guard crushes. That means if you land it raw, you can kind of do whatever you want afterwards as long as you time it right. You can combo into the EX one as well, and then on hit it just causes a crumple, and not a lot of great options you can get afterwards on this crumple. You just get like one big attack and then they kind of flip out of it. You could try to be a little bit sneaky with this. It's probably a little bit of a low tier tactic, but you could use it as like part of a block string. It's not really a block string because of the really long startup, and then so the opponent, because of the long startup, the opponent gets out of block stun, and then you can guard crush them. If you're further away though, that means it's going to be a little bit harder to convert off of it. So here's another opener you can use. It's half circle forward plus kick. It's this run right here. She runs a specific distance, and before she skids to a halt, if she kind of touches the opponent, she'll run through them. And while she's invisible, she can't be hit, but there is some recovery on it, both whether it whiffs, like she doesn't go through the opponent, she comes to a skid, there's a recovery animation, and there's a little bit if you don't happen to do anything afterwards. You can't block right away. Because this is considered an opener, you can do some other chains afterwards. So whatever you can do like in option B of the chain, out of the A, B, and C, we'll just say, you can do after that run through. So for example, that, like you can go through, cancel the bit of recovery on it into that second part of the sequence, which is a low. It's a little bit gimmicky, so you can see if your opponent's kind of paying attention, run through, cross up, and not only is it a cross up, but it's a low, for example, and then you can go from there. Just a side note, you don't have to go through them either. The EX version is quicker, and she covers more distance, and all the same rules apply. There is some recovery on it, and you can cancel into her other chains from it. It does become useful in certain higher level combos, but I probably wouldn't start there with combos. Right, next we're going to be moving on to the second part of her sequence. So after you do an opener, you have what is called your B options, and there's quite a few of them. The first one is up and punch. So it'll look like that second hit. So you can super cancel that into Climax or just regular supers. It will combo. It has a pretty specific range to it, so after certain sequences it may not hit. It's not the most consistent button, so like for example, if you want to do just like close heavy kick into this, that combos, and if you go into up plus punch, it'll just whiff. But if you were to do like the sequence I talked about earlier, which is using this as an opener off of her command normal, you can get it afterwards. It just kind of varies. You have to experiment around. If the opponent is put into like a juggle state, like for example from this, and that hits them, it'll just launch them higher into the air, which can be useful for catching them for additional damage. So stuff like that is possible. Just again, the range is really finicky, so once you start adding more stuff to it, it's harder to land with. I probably wouldn't use that too often, but you can get it off of something like that. I would, if you're going to use it, I would probably try to use it like that, like close heavy kick into the first hit of command normal, and then step forward, and because of that down forward light kick, she moves forward, it all combos, and it allows you to be closer so up and punch can hit. Also, the up and punch follow-up is really difficult to punish. It's only a little bit negative on block, so you can commit to it and it's really difficult to punish. So the next command you can do in a sequence for the B portion is forward and light kick. It'll look like that. It's that forward hop kick. So that is an overhead, so if the opponent is blocking low, that'll hit them. So feasibly you could do something like that and crack them on the head and get a little bit of damage on it, and there's not a lot of great follow-ups afterwards if you do try to use it that way as a, like you saw them block low and you want to hit them overhead. That's the most consistent follow-up I found, is that command grab at the end, and I'll go over that more for the closers, I guess I'll just call them. That move is really easy to punish too, so don't get getting it blocked. The next input you can put in the B part of the sequence is down and punch. Looks like that. That is a low. You can super cancel it. It's not a bad point to super cancel, honestly, if you're doing a really easy combo. So I mean, stuff like that is a little bit more on the simple side for this character if you wanted to use your chain attacks and still do something kind of easy. And it's really quick too, so it's pretty useful in block strings. You can kind of commit to it, and on top of it, it's pretty difficult to punish. Also, down and punch leads to one of our more consistent ways to get more damage, which is the closer, forward, and light punch. Lets you get that big ol' uppercut, and that uppercut leads to more damage, and I'll talk about that in the last section. The next one she has in the B part of the sequence is up and kick. It'll look like that. Generally speaking, you probably won't be using this. There might be some advanced combos where that's useful, where the opponent is kind of juggled and you can hit them out of the air with that, and then do the closer part of the sequence. There's not a lot of good ways to land that really if the opponent is crouching or just like if they're on the ground really. You have to be really close because the hitbox tapers off really quickly. So if you're using a lot of the other openers besides that one, then it becomes difficult to land. Alright, here we go. We're working our way through. Next up is forward and punch. This is also part of the B portion of her chains. So it looks like that's that punch right there. That is an overhead, has a lot of startup on it. So it's just another way if you want to open up somebody. If you didn't open them up already overhead with that, or open them up low with that, it's a lot slower than this overhead. You could react to it, I believe, but because it's slower and more reactable, the reward's a little bit higher. Like you can super cancel it, for example, to get more damage off of it, kind of reset the damage scaling. You could get it off of something like that, for example. You kind of trick them. You just cancel that opener right away before like any of the hits could land at all. There's some shenanigans you could do with like canceling some of her like openers into that really quickly. Like you could like cancel that, of course, will go back plus punch before it even comes out into the overhead. Kind of like that, and then you kind of like reset the scaling and you can super cancel it for even more damage. Or you can kind of go into one of the closers as well, like the command grab closer. That one right there. So that forward plus light punch is a little bit gimmicky and a little bit finicky as well, depending on your block string and like what came before it. It's really easy to have that whiff in front of your opponent. Another option you can do as part of the B part of this sequence is down or down back plus kick. It's that hopping low right there. So like I said just now, it's a low, it can only be blocked crouching, has a ton of startup, so generally speaking it won't combo off of really any of the other chains before it because of the startup. So with that in mind, that means there's a gap there, so feasibly the opponent could like mash out an invincible reversal during that if they're expecting it and hit you out of it. And yeah, if the opponent's just like wildly mashing, you can get mashed out of it. Again, I think this is more of another kind of a gimmick part of her string, not super solid. I think it's more for catching opponents who might be standing if they're kind of afraid that you might be doing something like an overhead after like the opener part of the sequence of her chains. You can get some follow-ups afterwards if you're within range, like that big ol' uppercut, which means you can get more damage off of that low. And you kind of reset them if you wanted to with like a super as well. The only other nuance there is to any one of these B sequences that I just told you about is that after any single one of them, you can hit roll, which is both light, so light punch and light kick, and you either hit that at neutral, plus back, or plus forward, and you'll do a feint. Kind of like that, where you cancel a bit of the recovery, and then you'll either feint backwards, in place, or forward. And it's only after one of these B sequences. You can't do it after a closer, and you can't do it after an opener. So what that can do is it can make it harder to punish some things like that. Like if you did that raw, and the opponent blocked it, they could easily punish you, but if you cancel with the feint, it becomes a lot harder to punish. There is recovery and some startup on the feints. Generally speaking, the most useful one is feint backwards. That's probably the one you'll be using. Feinting in place seems dangerous, especially if you use something with not a lot of hits on it, or a block stun on it. The opponent might be able to punish you, and feinting forward seems even more dangerous. Yeah, see what I mean? You just kind of like mash the opponent out of it if you feint forward or in place. Alright, next up we're going to be going over the closer. So after you do the first two inputs of your like chain attacks, you have one last option to close it all out, assuming you didn't do a feint. The first one is forward and light punch, and that's what it looks like. It looks like that uppercut. Depending on the chain you use, if you get pushed back a distance, it'll likely whiff. It's pretty negative all by itself, but as soon as you start using it in block strings, it becomes very difficult to punish. This is probably the one you'll be using the most, and you'll probably want to use it after a down and light punch from the second part of her chain. So off of that, for example. You can get it off of also like forward or down and light kick afterwards, like if you reset the opponent somehow and they stood up during your blocks and you hit them low with that delayed low, you can uppercut them as well right afterwards. You can link supers afterwards, like Climax super. That's one thing you can do. And you can also get just a regular super. You just have to time it right and catch him out of the air. You can also catch him out of the air with that special move for no meter. And if you happen to learn how to like consistently combo into that, like you learn your muscle memory for that, it's useful because her more advanced combos will have her hit them afterwards for more damage after that uppercut. So you'll be able to hit them with that. You'll be able to use the back forward light kick to hit them out of the air, and then you'll do more follow-ups afterwards to juggle them. Those combos become a little bit hard. Don't aim for those right away. That is the other follow-up you can do, or the other closer rather. It's forward forward and heavy punch. Has a lot of startup on it, but it is unblockable. Again, it's kind of a gimmick just to see if like the opponent is sleeping or if they're paying attention or not. You can link a super afterwards or a climax super. You can also hit him out of the air with that special move for no meter. Just be wary that if you have the opponent in the corner and you're really close, they'll just fly over your head, so you have to compensate for that with your inputs. The other closer you can do is forward forward and then either kick. So that's 3 hits right there. That is an overhead, so it can only block standing. And because it has a lot of startup on it, it's kind of a reset situation. If they've blocked everything else you've done, you could try to mix them up one final time at the end with that really long overhead. Fortunately, it is pretty difficult to punish. It's only a little bit negative on block, so if they happen to do stand up and block it, you're safe. Just be wary that there is a gap there because of the startup, so the opponent could like uppercut out of it if they're sharp. One of the other closers you can do is core circle forward plus light punch. So that is a command grab. Has a really specific range on it as well. You have to be pretty close, and because of the long startup, you're kind of using it as a reset option. That's a command grab basically. They can't block it. You can do something kind of like that, like where you fake the overhead, the opponent decides to stand, and then you cancel the overhead before it even comes down into that command grab. The last move you can use as a closer as part of her chains is cortical forward plus heavy punch. It's another command grab. This one's a little bit more guaranteed after special moves. It'll actually combo. For example, like that's guaranteed. You know, stuff like that is possible because of that. It's your second most useful one. It's like your safest option to end certain sequences off of. If you're out of range for forward light punch to land, then you want to probably close it with cortical forward heavy punch. The other command grab plus the overhead and the unblockable, those 3 are kind of like gimmicks that you can use to surprise your opponent, see if they're paying attention, or to see like how much matchup knowledge they have against this character. Alright, let's go over supers next. Our first one is back, then forward, down, down, forward plus punch. So that super is good for catching opponents out of the air after certain moves put them in a juggle state. And here's the EX version. Next super she has is a counter. So it's the same motion, back, then forward, down, down, forward, but you use kick instead. And then her climax super is core circle forward twice plus both kicks. And this is an overhead, so the opponent is crouch blocking, that will hit them. If you're canceling a super into another super, the only way to really go about it is from the punch super into climax super. You're going to cancel on that last hit. That last hit has a long wind up to it, so it's really easy to see coming and cancel in time. Right now, some combos that get you started. Easy stuff from up close would be like close heavy kick into a command normal. Is a core circle back plus light punch. Or you can use heavy punch as well. That's really easy to do, and you can super cancel that as well. You You can also go into that move as well. If you want to actually go into her chains and start learning them, I would suggest starting here. And then moving on from there and see what you can get. And then here's kind of like what you might want to aim for eventually. From crouching, not a lot of super easy stuff. The easiest that I found actually during this recording is that right there. Something else you could do from crouching. I probably learned that from crouching. And of course experiment around with your chains and see what you can get working, what's easiest for you. And of course refer to the special moves section, especially the chain portion, that way you know kind of what chains into what, more or less, what's pretty easy, and kind of what your options are. Alright everybody, thanks for watching the Angel Beginner Breakdown. This is the beginner breakdown that I was most worried about since I first started this series like a little over a year ago, which is kind of crazy by the way that I've been doing this for a little over a year. Of course my videos have slowed down. I never once wanted to learn this character in the previous KoF games just because of that command list. It was pretty daunting. And yeah, this video is probably the longest I had to sit down and record something for. I'm looking at the time right now. Ooh, looking like over an hour and 40 minutes. Regardless, let's go to member select. Something you might notice if you look right away, I have the DLC characters now. So I'll be doing videos on them. Also, really quickly, if you did not notice, hopefully this video doesn't look too different from the other ones. Hopefully it looks better. I did switch to PC, so I'm playing the PC version, and no issues here on recording it. Hopefully the final edited product ends up looking fine. So thank you for, regardless, thank you for watching the Angel Beginner Breakdown video, and I'll see you next episode with King of Dinosaurs.